मसाले तो बहुत हैं, पर प्रकृति की गोद से खास चुने मसाले जिनकी ताजगी, खुशबू और स्वाद रहे बरकरार, ऐसे उम्दा मसाले बनाते हैं सिर्फ कैच। कैच का कोई मैच नहीं, 100%।
Our next session is a book launch in which Gauri Singh, former editor of some of India's biggest lifestyle and entertainment publications, will be launching her latest book, The Bollywood Affair, along with model and television host Perzad Khola Marshall. The book, led by two strong and brave women, is an absolute treat for everyone who enjoys reading crime fiction.
Hi everyone, I am so pleased to be in conversation with author Gauri Singh at the Times Lit Festival on her wonderful latest book, The Bollywood Affair. Now this is the book to look out for, a must buy. Well, this book follows young, glamorous private investigators Akriti Rai and Parvati Samant as they chase a spooky mystery set in the 1990s in the most glamorous place in India. And now you've guessed that right, beloved Bollywood. Well, full of exciting characters, including superstars at war with each other and a lady love they're fighting over. And of course, a haunted house movie being filmed in the book simultaneously. Now, I was very excited to read this book because it is set in one of my favorite places, the world of film. Hi, Gauri. So good to see you here today.
Hello, Perizad. Can I call you Pari like I always do?
Yes, of course.
Coincidentally, it's also the name of my central character, Parvati. Pari.
Yes.
So I'm so happy to be here. Also, thank you, Times Literature Fest, for inviting me. I'm delighted to be here.
Thank you, Gauri. Now, you have set your crime thriller, The Bollywood Affair, in the 1990s. Now, why 1990s is the period you have chosen?
Pari, that's absolutely right. I did set it in the 1990s, and the 1990s actually was the period that I debuted as an insider in the glamour world of India, of Mumbai especially, but not in Bollywood, but in modeling. And that period is very, very close, in terms of how I lived through it. So it has that authenticity. And I believe when you write something, if you have an authenticity of ethos, it shows, it speaks. I wanted to bring that to my audience. Also, the time now we're living through. We're living in a pandemic. There is a conflict not far from our borders. It's a very grim time. I wanted this book set in the 1990s to offer a little light relief, a little solace, much like its subject, Bollywood. In fact, I wrote a note to my readers at the very beginning. Before beginning the book, I've written a note to my readers, and I'd really like to tell you, because you're asking me this question, I want to write, actually read out what I've written
Yes,
about the setting. Yeah. So I'm going to say this book, set in the late 1990s, harkens to a simpler era where joy was perhaps easier to come by. Reading it allows nostalgia, the permission to skip to a lighter, less complicated moment in time when we still had the luxury of wallowing in our pleasant pastimes. Among them, the poster child of the big, beautiful world of Indian cinema, Bollywood. There you go. That's why I said it in the 1990s.
Yes, true. But you are right. Back then, those were simpler times. I mean, compared to today, the pandemic, it's something unforeseen, something we had never even imagined we would be living in a time like this. So you are right, simpler and probably a little happier time, I'm glad your book is set in the 1990s. Now, your two detectives in the story are very young and glamorous, different from the conventional sort. Like, why did you pick young and glamorous type of detectives?
Pari, when you think of detectives in crime fiction, especially because my book is a crime thriller, you're thinking, and I'm talking about the iconic ones. I'm not talking about characters which are one book or two book old. I'm talking about characters which have influenced generations. like an Hercule Poirot, Agatha Christie, or like a Sherlock Holmes. You know, when you're thinking these characters, you're thinking they're male and you're thinking they're older. I wanted to break that. I wanted to write a novel which was aspirational, which breaks these stereotypes, bring in young women and bring in women, more importantly, and ordinary women, women who are like you and me. They're ordinary women thrown into extraordinary situations. And what they do, you know, solving crimes doesn't come naturally to them. They are not trained in police work. They're young, they're glamorous, they're multitaskers like most of the youth today is. You know, I also wanted this book to resonate with the youth of today, because a lot of the youth of today are not doing just one thing, they're doing several things. And so are these women, you know, and multiple career choices available for them. And also, though it's set in the 1990s, that spirit lives on. You know, that spirit of that can-do spirit, in a sense. And things don't come easy to them. You know, just like life, as they evolve, the book evolves. And they try to meet everything with grit and with tenacity, which are important life lessons, according to me.
No, I totally agree with you. These are important life lessons. And Gauri, you know, something like these life lessons, it's a theme that has been part of your book, I think part of most of your books, right? So can you elaborate more on that for our viewers today?
Yeah, you know, actually, it's a theme, you're correct. It runs through almost all my writing. To become more than you are by being a part of something bigger than yourself. Ordinary people thrown into extraordinary situations and made extraordinary by rising to the occasion. And in doing so, finding clarity on their own path. You know, it's not always easy, but life is never easy. Yet their purpose is always to heal and to help. And thereby they find clarity, not just for themselves, but for others. So the idea being everywhere through all the books, and especially also through this one, as you lift up others, you also lift up yourself.
Gauri, amazing. Truly, well said. You're really going to be inspiring our audience.
I hope so.
Yes, of course, most definitely. And, you know, this brings us now to the central character, Parvati, as being a champion of the underdog. Now, you have used this as a device in the series to highlight a lot of social evils. Can you tell us more about that?
So this book, The Bollywood Affair, it's out and out a crime thriller. Okay, there is no question. This whole series on Akriti Parvati are crime thrillers. But my books are aspirational in nature and they are set in popular culture. So the first book was set in the world of modeling. This book is set in Bollywood. As you know, and I know, Bollywood can have a dark side. And a lot of the youth of today, a lot of people aspiring to be a part of that world may not know how to combat that necessarily. So yes, you're absolutely right. My central character, Parvati, she is a private investigator. Let's not deviate from that storyline. But alongside, there are threads which try and tackle things which make her a champion of the underdog. In the first book, for instance, she stood up to a mean girl. And it's very important in life, especially for the youth, to stand up to bullying. Bullying is a huge theme, at the youth level. And a lot of people don't realize that they can stand up to bullying. Similarly, in this book, she supports a battered woman. Now, battered women is a Pandora's box, honestly. You know, it's something that often abuse is swept under the carpet. People don't like to talk about it. It's not something that sits well. And yet it's very, very prevalent. I'm not saying in Bollywood, it's prevalent all over the world, in more places than we'd like to imagine. She does her bit by trying to write that without giving away too much of the story, and the central theme still being a detective tale. I wanted this series especially, if just be there for somebody somewhere when they read the book, to offer a little bit of help, to maybe start a conversation just like we are having, you know, to highlight it in some way without deviating from the main storyline.
No, you're right. This book will definitely inspire people to at least open up, and open up and even get help. It's the need of the hour. And I think you are highlighting something that is so, so important today. So I'm certain that a lot of people will relate to this. And I'm really hoping through this book, they come out in the open and help themselves, because it is very, very important at the end of the day.
Not, Pari, can I interrupt you? It's not just helping themselves, it's helping others. To stand up for those, to speak up for those who cannot speak up for themselves. That is actually what I was trying to convey whilst doing it.
And now Bollywood has been almost personalized, in this book, like an attractive, almost dangerous magnet. Now, what is that all about?
Living in Mumbai as we do, you and me both, you cannot escape Bollywood.
No.
The glamour, the grandeur. We live in India's commercial capital, and Bollywood is larger than life. So also it has a myriad facets, Pari. It's not just one thing. I wanted to bring that to my audiences, not just the facets, but the contrasts. So the character in my book, like one of them, the superstar, he's a much adulated superstar, yet he lives a life of terrible isolation. There is beauty in Bollywood, but there is also darkness. I'm not saying there is no darkness in other professions. Other glamour professions also have it. I mean, look at the Time's Up and Me Too movements in Hollywood, which is Bollywood's contemporary, and the world over. But what fascinated me and what I wanted to bring forth to my audiences was Bollywood of the late 1990s had a code of omerta, keeping your silence in face of the outsiders, in face of strangers. What happens in Bollywood stays in Bollywood. I wanted to put, it's not so much now with social media and a lot of people, but in the 1990s, it was very, very evident. And I wanted to bring those nuances of the 1990s to my readers. I wanted to bring in a movie within a book talking about a movie. So you have the theme of things are not always what they appear to be, in talking of Bollywood's many layers. At the same time, I have always treated Bollywood with great affection for all that darkness, because as you and I both know, it can be immensely magnetic. And I think all film lovers would attest to that.
Yes, that I totally agree. And magnetic is the right word to use. But Gauri, you have also, brought out other nuances of the 1990s B-Town, like the introduction of vanity vans, how they came up in the late 1990s, what happened at outdoor shoots, the socializing there, the parties. Tell our viewers a little more about that.
So all this, Pari, you're right about all of it. It all ties in with bringing authenticity of the setting to my audiences. So yes, most certainly, outdoor shoots. You yourself as a TV personality and an anchor and somebody who's a model has traveled outdoors. And there is always that sense of being away from home. Anything can happen. You meet in someone's room, you get to know them better, stuff like that. And this is also stuff that I've brought into the book. Again, things like having a secretary. Today's Bollywood, most of the actors have full team. There's an entire team of professionals looking after every aspect. At that time, in the 1990s, they had one secretary. He was like the precursor of today's manager, but he handled everything. He handled dates, he handled schedules, he handled PR, and all this I have brought into the book. You're talking about vanity vans. In the late 1990s, 1998, where I've set this book, they had just about come into India. Only superstars had them. So if you were a superstar, maybe you had a vanity van. Otherwise, they used to change on location and makeshift. They were literally, some of them used to hang up their saris and change behind at outdoor shoots. So all this I wanted to bring in to my book to get the audience closer to the 1990s Bollywood experience. And I hope I've done, an authentic job of it.
I think you've definitely done justice to this. And yet there are a lot of people who are not aware of what happened back then. And you're right about the vanity vans. We live in a world today where everything is like ready. We have an entourage of people doing anything and everything for us. Everything is ready on a platter. Back
Absolutely.
then, people had to work very hard to get even a few things get going for themselves. Now, also one more thing I've noticed in your book.
Also, Pari, wait,
Yes,
just
sure.
before you ask me, I want to also say it gave them, see, because there was no immediacy, also like social media now brings stars up close and personal. That's
Yes.
great. But when they were not, there was that larger than life aura. That whole looking at
Yes.
from the outside in, which I've tried to.
There was like a mystery to these characters.
Yes, there was a magneticism to that 1990s Bollywood. Yes.
No, I agree with you. No, I was about to tell you that, in your book, the pet is a star. And I remember your wonderful, beautiful dog, Simba. You were very attached to him. And your first book was also about Simba.
You're right. My God, what a memory, Pari. Thank you for bringing that up. Pets in this book have a starring role. Also, I'd like to go back. You're talking about my first book, Dogs and the Story of Simba. It was about my dog, but it because it was narrative nonfiction, but it also tackled Bombay or Mumbai, life and living in a beloved city with a beloved pet. So in that sense, it was a holistic book. It had an introduction by our wonderful thespian, Mr. Amitabh Bachchan. It had a commendation by global icon Priyanka Chopra. And both of them are animal lovers. And I found that with animals, it was launched by Sonam Kapoor. But what I'm trying to get to in this book, I wanted to find and wanted to highlight the times that we are living in now. As you know, the pandemic, a
Yes.
lot of people are buying pets.
Yes.
They're all working from home. There is grimness around all over. To lift themselves up, to offer a little happiness, a lot of people are buying pets. And I wanted this book to resonate that, to kind of bring in the upliftment and joy and unconditional positive regard that a pet brings to everybody's life. And it's not only, honestly, it's not just through like the bond is so fulfilling. I didn't want it as a side story. It is central to the plot, because that love for an animal is almost like loving a member of your family. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes. And especially in this pandemic, you're absolutely right.
Absolutely.
People have just, gone all out and introduced pets as part of their family members. And today you see social media posts, it's all about dog food, to how they treat their dog and their love for dogs and cats and other pets.
Absolutely.
It's wonderful.
And I wanted to bring that across because this book is a pandemic book. I was editing it during the pandemic.
Yes.
The second wave, which was brutal.
And this book also marries glamour and crime. Now, how does something like that come across?
As anybody who worked in journalism would tell you, when you have a front page which features glamour and crime, it's a winner. Audiences lap it up. And I wanted to bring that to my book series. So basically you have the happiness industries, which is popular culture, you have modeling, or you have Bollywood in this case. They're light, they're enjoyable, they're material. And then you juxtapose that with crime, murders. What could be more serious than death? So I wanted to bring that to my audiences. And also the series, in fact, uses happiness industries and popular culture to maybe explore darker narratives. You could say that?
Yes, yes. And also the villain in your series, they're not wholly good and they're not wholly bad. Now, how do you justify something like that?
Pari, who is wholly good or wholly bad? Please tell me.
No one. No one.
So you're completely right. I really felt that art imitates life, imitates art, if you say. Okay, for me, the maxim is evil often lurks in plain sight. It is not this great big villain that you're investigating to find. You are creeping around corners and you're trying this huge, completely evil force. That's for the fairy stories. A lot of time, like in real life, evil lurks around you. It's in your house. It's with your friends, maybe. friends in single inverted. You never know. And without giving too much away, I created a story speaking of evil around us, which may often hide in plain sight, as I say.
Yes. Wonderful. I think this is going to be a very interesting read, and the people are going to absolutely love this book. You know, I was just thinking about this. There are a lot of authors who have different writing processes, and it really doesn't seem as easy as it is, right? Especially during the pandemic, and people go through a lot. The authors, while I'm sure there are a lot of frustrations that come out to the table when you're writing a book, especially something like this. So, what has been Gauri's writing process?
You know, okay, let me say this first and foremost. If you expect me to say, I love writing. Writing is with me.
Yes,
it has
I know
always
that.
been, okay? But if you're expecting me to say that it's this glamorous process, like as glamorous as my characters, I have to disappoint you. Especially in, for instance, writing a crime thriller. Because in the beginning, you're doing this meticulous plotting. You have to tie all the loose ends up. You have to make sure that each thing that you have talked about is properly led to its correct conclusion without leaving anything for any audience to tell or reader to tell you, look, but what happened to that? So
Yes.
it's an often laborious, frustrating process. But as a writer, I would want to be nowhere else. I am in my dream living it.
Wow. And I'm sure. And Gauri, being and writing it during the pandemic, I mean, that must have had its own set of challenges for you.
You know, buddy, the pandemic threw me. They say that, okay, you're a writer, it must be wonderful, you can work from home, but everybody's at home. Everyone you know, your entire family, everyone's at home. To kind of write with distractions requires great, immense discipline. So it actually was not exactly an extremely productive time because there were a lot of distractions, but distractions maybe, but distractions definitely. And also it was a time of psychological weighing down. We were all in it together. It was a very grim time. So how does a writer manage to combat that? To kind of put that aside and try and come up with something, to be part of the creative process. As I said in my note to my readers at the beginning of the book, you must believe in something. If it's not good now, it will be. You believe it will be. You believe you will come out of that second wave. And I wanted this book, therefore, to be that cocoon or to be that little piece of solace, much like the industry that it speaks about, 1990s big budget Bollywood, how that was for its commercial Bollywood, for its audiences, the theater going public, the great Indian theater going public. I wanted this book to be that oasis of escape or even solace when I was writing. So in that sense, that was my intention in this pandemic, to kind of get, and also most importantly, to channel joy, because there is too much grimness around. You have to channel joy. You have to look for things that lift you up.
This has been a very, very difficult period for everyone. And we just pray that this phase, Gauri, just passes by and people come out stronger, and pray for all those who've lost their lives. And I hope your book is that oasis for people to come out and at least read this book and enjoy themselves while doing so. And finally, I wanted to ask you, is there anything you would like to convey through this book to our audience who is listening to you today?
I want this book, as well as all my writing, actually just to lift people up. When they say good writing, it must have irony. Good writing, deeper writing, also has a sense of loss more often than not. But for me, for my writing, especially in these times, Pari, I want it only to uplift people. If even for a little bit, a little while, they have been uplifted reading it, then my work is done.
I'm sure it's going to uplift a lot of people, inspire a lot of people. And that, unfortunately, brings us to the end of a wonderful session. So thank you so much, Gauri, for talking to me. The book certainly channeled a lot of joy for me, and I know readers will thoroughly enjoy it too. Bollywood has always been magical, and your book brings that forth in a new way by being woven into a crime thriller. I wish you and your book every success going forward. And I would also like to thank all our viewers who have tuned in to watch this. Thank you so much.
Thank you for watching today's sessions. Please join us this coming Saturday between 5 to 7 p.m. to watch our upcoming sessions. We will kickstart with Elif Shafak, Turkish-British novelist and women's rights activist, in conversation with Vinita Daura Nangia, the director of Times Literature Festivals and executive editor Times of India. Next, we will bring to you acclaimed cricketer Suresh Raina, who will be talking to Rajesh Kaldra, the executive chairman of Asianet, about his autobiography titled Believe. In the last session, mythologist and author Devdutt Patnaik will be in conversation with writer and translator Archana Sharma about keeping faith in the pandemic. Also, don't forget to talk about us on your social media handles by using the hashtag TimesLitFest.